Welcome. Today I want to take a look at Vamos Deploy. Before we go any further, we need to cover some Vamos concepts. Applications. A Vamos application is a bundle of files with a name, a version number and a status. Repos. A Vamos repo or repository is an instance of Vamos running on a particular host. It has a unique identifier and a directory structure on the host. Properties. A classic example of a property is a port number. And a grid. A Vamos grid is what ties all these together. It contains a list of applications, being the what, a list of repos, being the where, and properties, which provide environment-specific settings. A grid can be deployed, which is how we make applications available for use on a host. This deploy of grids is the core functionality of Vamos. I would now like to introduce to you Vamos CLI and Vamos Dashboard by creating and deploying a basic grid. So let's start by creating an application. Create. Test app Python. Okay, so that's successfully registered and the content's been copied to Vamos Equities Applications Test App Python 1. Now let's add a subscription. This is intended to go to all Linux repos, so I'm adding a subscription of Linux. I'll go into subscriptions in much more detail later on. Okay, so let's take a look. This is created. It's in the status of local, so it's local to this machine. It doesn't exist on any other host at the moment. Next, we said a repo has a unique identifier, a directory structure on the host. So let's have a look at what repos we've got set up. So we have two. We are interested in Equities Vamos Test. That's the ID. Equities is the name of the repo. Vamos Test is the name of this host. At the moment in this repo there are Vamos applications and one grid, Vamos, because Vamos uses itself to deploy itself. So let's take a look at the file system. And there's the test app Python that we just created. And let's take a look at the grids. We have one grid called Vamos. We can see here that each of the applications within a grid are represented by a soft link, which sets the current version. Okay. Let's create a grid. Test grid. Okay, that's successfully created. Let's add our application. Test app Python. Okay, so we've added that. Let's add our repo, which is Equities Vamos Test. And let's add a property. Message from grid. And we'll say hello from grid. Okay, so that's added. Let's have a look at what we've created using the info command. Okay, so we see there the grid created with one application, one property, and our repo. Okay, so let's deploy it. Okay, so we can track the progress of this release. And that's completed. We can see what tasks were created to complete this release. Just created one job, which was to download that application. Okay, so on our file system, let's take a look at that's our Vamos grid. You see here our test grid is now appeared. And there's our test.python as well. Okay. Now let's execute our application that we've just deployed. Okay, so all this did was print out the property that we set on the grid. This would be the command that would you use in your scheduler, whether you use AutoSys or even cron. It doesn't need to change when you change the version of your application, because, and this is an important point, the grid controls the version that is currently live. Now let's take a look at the audit and see what we did. Okay, so we can see we created the grid, we added an application, we added a repo, we added a property, and then we deployed it. So that concludes this demo. The deploy of grids is the core functionality of Vamos, and we will examine it much closer in the next demo in this series, Vamos Deploy Take a Look.